Welcome back to Worldie Unboxed, the Founders Edition. In this episode, we're splitting the content into two parts for your listening convenience. Part one features a compelling conversation with Juliana Casale, founder of Balloon, a Canadian sparkling water brand. Juliana shares her journey, the challenges of launching a beverage company, and the toughest aspects of being an entrepreneur. Later this week, Aaron and I will reflect on our chat with Juliana, exploring how her insights resonate with our own experiences at Worldie. Stay connected with us by joining our community at worldiebrand.com and subscribing to the Worldie YouTube channel for clips from our conversations. All right, let's talk to Juliana.
And I guess what's your background and how'd you end up doing a seltzer? Like how'd you get interested in that?
Yeah, so I'm a giant seltzer nerd. I drink them all the time. For the past, like, I'd say 5 or 6 years, I've just been on a spree where every time I see a new one, I have to buy it, try it. I'm part of this secret seltzer society on Facebook for it's like 3,000 of us across the globe. And we all compare notes about what we're drinking and why we like it or we don't like it. And so, yeah, like I already had that as like something that I'm into. It's like my weird quirk. Everyone's like, "Oh, tell me a thing about you." I'm like, "I like seltzer." Um, so like that was already like part of my essence, I guess. And then I gradually started having these jobs where I was marketing a software company, but the target audience for the software was e-commerce founders. And so like I got to know a lot of people in the space that were doing apparel or beauty or food and beverage. So it's got to see kind of behind the scenes of how they make their dreams a reality. Like they have this idea, they turn it into a physical product, they sell it. And sort of saw the movement of like direct to consumer as like the shiny new way to get in front of people, and then kind of like not the fall of it, but like it's not everything. Like you can't have it be everything if you want to scale, it seems like. So like just seeing the proliferation of different channels and strategies around growth. So just like as I familiarize myself with the space, I was like, oh, this is like a thing you can do. Um, and like there's not a lot standing in your way aside from capital to get it off the ground. And like you just need to figure out what your plan is. And then I hadn't really even started thinking about doing it myself, but I got laid off from my job last December. So like about a year ago. I was like, oh, I have like this free time and this severance. Like for the first time in my life, I have more than 2 weeks to think about what I want to do. And, I'm like, oh, I have a marketing background. Like, let me sketch out what I think a brand could be if I wanted to make something. And obviously seltzer was the obvious answer to what I would be making. So just started like plotting out stuff in a notebook and then started messing around in my kitchen with formulas because I was like, oh, let's see what I can make by myself. And then my husband's like, are you actually doing this? And I was like, yes, I am. So we had to talk about finances. And then, yeah, it just kind of kicked off from there. So we agreed I would just use my freelance marketing money that I'd made over the past few years as my startup money. And then, yeah, I just started figuring out who could help me, who I needed to talk to, what questions I had, which are a lot. And I had to humble myself and like ask really dumb things to really smart people, but they're not dumb, but it's just like I don't know. Like my background is not in CPG or D2C. So it's just like a matter of saying like, hey, do you have 5 minutes? And being really specific. Like I don't want to pick your brain in general. I had like these specific questions to ask you. And that way people are always more likely to help you. Because I've always been on the receiving end of people being like, "Oh, do you want to like tell me all about marketing?" I'm like, "That's so broad. Like, help me help you. What do you actually want to know? Like, what's on your mind now?" And so, yeah, just making it easy for people to help me. And then everyone that I've asked for assistance has helped. Like, they've gotten on the phone with me, they've made referrals, they've made recommendations, they've told me what not to do, they've told me what to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. So in those early days, were you just kind of like in the kitchen experimenting with flavors yourself? Like how does that work?
Yeah, so I bought a soda stream so I could carbonate water. I found out, and I didn't know this, and I thought this was fascinating. You can just contact a flavor house, that's what they're called, and they have like a whole library of natural essences. And you say, I want some grapes, I want some apples, I want some whatever flavor you're looking for, and they'll send you for free in the mail samples. So then you get to play around with them. So at first I was like, all right, let's see which type of grape resonates with me, like what kind of apple I'm going for. And so at first I was like, oh, let me just see what I can do to blend several grapes, let's say, together with carbonated water to see what that feels like. But I kind of got to a point where it didn't taste great. So then I started playing around with sweeteners. So I would try agave or something else where it was like not sugar, but like sugar adjacent, just to say like, oh, there's no added sugar, but it's still like natural flavors that we're using. And then I even got so far as to put like a little bit of citric acid in because I found that like I did some research and I was like, oh, if you want something to feel a little bit more robust or flavorful, like you can add that. But I'm not a scientist, so like my experiments were just like so sour or like so intense or not intense enough, or like I just knew that if I wanted to take it to the next level, I would need an actual food or beverage scientist to help. And especially with like commercialization, you need nutrition facts, you need ingredients, you need certifications, you need like the recipe to give to someone who's going to co-pack or manufacture it. So I had to reckon with the fact that I was going to have to part with a lot of money because they're not cheap. And there were alternatives, like I could get funding from the government, but I'd have to hire someone first. So it'd be like more money to hire a person in order to qualify, or like there were accelerators or incubators, but they were starting like 3 or 4 months after I wanted to get started. So I didn't want to sacrifice that time waiting. So I ended up I was like, all right, here's like 10K to just give to this lab so they could do all the work for me. But it actually was so nice to not have to have that on my plate. I just didn't feel like I'm not qualified for a lot of this stuff, but I definitely wasn't qualified for that, and not in a way you can just fudge. So I was like, all right, we'll kick this off. And it was really great. So these people like took what I said I wanted. I had to explain like, here's what a mango tastes like to me, and you go try to make that happen with your taste buds as well. So they would come back. So they have other flavor houses they were working with. So they sourced them, came back to me, said, all right, here's V1 of it. Which ones do you like? And then here's V2 of it. Which ones do you like? And so like that was a professional piece that I just had to get taken care of, because like I can do all the marketing stuff. I can do like a lot of the community building. I can do a bit of PR, like, but food science is you can't just fake that.
And how long has it been since you've been working on this now?
Yeah, so December of last year until almost December now. So a year from doodling in my notebook to I have this let's see, the prototype can. So these are now sitting in my co-packers holding facility until they can be filled. I'm still waiting on the ingredients to mail, but like this is 90% done, which is amazing.
And then you've sold all of those, basically all the cans that are sitting in the warehouse. Is that right? Through the pre-order, or like how is that working?
Oh, I wish that were the way it worked. No. So I am one of the big challenges to all of this is figuring out how much of each thing to order in the process, because you need cans, you need ingredients, you need packaging, you need, I mean, in my case, I need apparel because I did my pre-orders with swag attached to it. And none of the minimum order quantities are the same for any of those. So I had to order more cans than I ended up selling with the pre-order just to get the minimum order quantity met. Same thing with the ingredients. They wanted an insane amount of fluid sent to me, like I think 116 pounds worth of ingredients that are being sent to my co-packer. I was like, I don't want or need this much, but that's what I have to do in order to buy it. So like you just kind of have to play ball. So for this first batch, I'm going to make the minimum order quantity of the cans, but I'll have way more ingredients than I need and way more boxes than I need. So like if the batch goes well, I send it out to the pre-order people. They say, this is great. I will make another batch with the rest of what I have, and then try to sell it. And that'll be the next challenge after getting the feedback.
And it seems like it's actually been pretty quick. So about a year to kind of
Mhm.
launch. Has it felt difficult? Has it felt easy? Because we've been at it for like almost 2 years, or about 2 years exactly, and we're still in the prototyping phase. So I
Mhm.
guess, how hard does it feel to start a beverage company?
Um, it feels easy in the sense that I've been able to do it without ever having done it before, but it's hard in the fact that it's like planning a wedding. There are so many pieces and nuances and details. So it's like, oh, I'm gonna find a co-packer, but like, where do I even start with that? Like, I'm going to need a contract. I'm probably going to need that contract looked at by a lawyer. I need to figure out, like, I have to go to the facility, talk to the person, make sure everything looks good. Like, I've got to figure out when they can slot me into their production schedule. Like, so that's just one piece of it. But then you also have, yeah, like the actual essence of the product and the packaging it's going to go in. And subcategory of that is like graphic design. What is the can going to look like? What is the label going to look like? What regulations are there to putting something on the can? Got to get a UPC code. I've got to get someone to look at it to make sure it meets all the criteria for the government. Is there provincial or like countrywide laws? How am I going to sell this in retail if I intend to sell it in retail? Like, do I have to address that now or later? Like, each piece of it has like 30 sub tasks. So like, that's the really hard part, is like there's so much and there's never any end to being done. Like, even now I have to think about filing my active trademark. I've got to think about like customs brokerages. I have to think about liability insurance. Like, these are things that, like, even though I almost have the product done, like, I'm not done. I don't think I'll ever be done. And I'm one person working on it. I don't have a co-founder. So like,
Yeah.
it's all me. And I have 2 kids and a full-time job.
Oh,
Have
wow.
you thought about bringing on a co-founder, or maybe just having a team where you don't really pay them, but you give them equity? Because that does seem like a lot.
It is a lot, but I have the skills to do it so far by myself. And I think I've been able to move so fast because I'm not asking someone else for permission or their thoughts. I'm just making the decisions really quickly. So I feel like at this point it would slow me down more than it would help me. And I'm not at a point where I'm like under the water or into the weeds yet. So like, if it becomes too much, and maybe that's not the right way to do it, but I don't know. I've worked at so many startups where it's like, you don't solve the problem until you feel the pain of it first, because then you know you have to do something. But if you're fine, then you don't like hire ahead of needing it usually. So I wouldn't hire ahead of needing it. I think I might be in pain for a few months if I do it this way, but at least I know I need it, and not just like I did this because it's something somebody else has done or I thought I had to.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have kind of like mentors in this space, or is it just you reach out to people randomly and get help when you can?
Yeah, I think as I was starting to get this off the ground, I would reach out to people that I saw posting about things on LinkedIn or active in my founders groups, or, I'd see people and say, hey, do you mind if I ask you about this specific thing? As I was having those conversations, there naturally were some people that I had a really good rapport with. They flat out offered to follow up with me or continue being in touch, or I'd send them updates and they'd say, keep me posted, or they'd reach out of their own accord and ask me how things were going. So those people naturally became more of my mentors. Like, I don't have a formal one, but there's like a small handful, I'd say, of people that I've kind of kept in the loop and like have asked them questions as I go along. Like, is this an insane amount of money to pay for liability insurance? Or like, do I need this thing or that other thing? And so, yeah, like informal mentorship, but like a big pool of people who've all influenced my strategy, but also like a small group of people who are more my core mentor crew.
I guess just going back to the actual product itself, how do you describe the product, how it's different from other things on the market, stuff like that?
Yeah, so at first I was thinking about how I could differentiate between, everyone's like, oh, how it's different than like an AHA or a bubbly or a LaCroix. And those are all zero sugar true seltzers. Like, they're just carbonated water and natural essence. And so I thought the way I would compete was on flavor. So a lot of them are like pretty straightforward, like citrus fruits. And so I was like, oh, what flavors can't I get on the market? What would I want to see and enjoy drinking? Like, what are the things that my community online has said like they wish they could get? And so I came up with the 3 flagship favorite flavors that I'm going to launch with, and those were mango, green apple, and fruit punch. And you can't usually get those. Like, I've known of a couple instances where you could get one of those, but like either they stopped making that flavor, or like the company folded, or maybe it just came out, but it's like a seasonal edition. So to be able to get that year round for me would be pretty rare. And so I was like, oh, I'll just compete on flavor. But then when I was in the lab, I think it was like flavor tasting round 2 out of 3, my husband was with me and he's like, why are you so dead set against adding sugar? Like, I know you want to compete with all the other no sugar seltzers, but like, I bet you anything, if you just added a few grams, it would taste so much better. And so I told the scientists at the lab, like, okay, can you make a variation of it that has like a little bit just to see what that does? Because I knew from adding the agave in the kitchen when I was messing around that it did taste better. And so they came back to me, and the fruit punch was off the charts, so much more delicious with a little bit of sugar. And so I had this aha moment of, why am I fighting this? If it tastes so much better, if it's not that bad for you, it's still not nearly as much as a soda. So now I'm in this category, and it's kind of inadvertently putting me in a category where I'm not an aha or a bubbly, because it has sugar in it and it tastes better. So like, that's where I think I'm going to sit, is like, it's not a true seltzer, so it's a little bit different. It's not a soda because it's not nearly as sugary. It's not a juice, it's its own. Like, no, I haven't seen anyone else doing that without adding something else. Like, there's a lot of seltzers now that have that, but they also have like CBD or adaptogens or like whatever. There's like other stuff, ashwagandha. So I haven't seen anything that's just like a little bit of sugar and seltzer.
So it sounds like you almost think about it as a new category. And do
Mhm.
you think that's going to be something you have to educate customers on and potentially come up with kind of like a new name for what you're doing? Because you said it's not really a soda. It's different from seltzers. It's different from sparkling water. So I guess from a marketing standpoint, how are you thinking about making that clear to customers?
Yeah, I think I'm not gonna make my own. I'm not gonna like make up a word or a term for it, because that is a lot of work. And people aren't Googling that. Like, I think it would sit in the sparkling water realm of beverages, because I can't, like, again, seltzer has no sugar, so I think it's more of a like sparkling water with essence kind of situation. But I do think I need to tell a little bit of a story around, like, sugar is not the devil. Like, yes, a lot of it is bad for you, but you do need sugar to live. Like, it is kind of a necessary part of being alive. And so, like, it can be a little bit cheeky about like, a little bit of sweetness is not bad for you. Like, there's a lot of marketing I can do around that. Like, I think it could be a fun campaign. So I think that's probably where I'll end up, just kind of fighting the good fight. Like, sugar, like, I think the pendulum has swung so far away from sugar that we're getting ridiculous. Like, if you have to use sucralose or stevia or like whatever, just to mask the fact that you don't have sugar. And but like, the aftertaste, I don't know. To me, I hate the aftertaste of those things. So I'm like, you just made your product something I don't want to buy ever again.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess when did you realize that there was an opportunity in the market for a product like this, or was it just you wanted to make your own drink and didn't necessarily do a full scan of the market?
Yeah. So, I mean, I did do some customer research. So, as I said, I'm part of this community of seltzer nerds. And so I did put out a survey and say, like, can you tell me about your lifestyle and like why you got into this, and if you have a soda stream at home, and like what compels you to buy certain brands over others, and like what's your price point sensitivity, and like what would compel you to pick up a new brand you never seen before, and all of that. And I asked them about what flavors they wish they could see, so I picked the top 3 that everyone said they wanted. So I did kind of validate that it would be going in the right direction. But I think I have the passion for this that you can't fake. Like, if this was a market opportunity, I'm just solving a problem, but I didn't care about it, I feel like I wouldn't be as motivated to do everything I'm doing. So it has to be something I care about. But B, I've been pregnant twice now, and I can tell you from trying to go to social events or networking events, like, your options are booze or juice or soda or water, and none of those things are super exciting or allowable, in some cases. And so, like, I wished that I had another option that was fun to drink, that made me feel like I was participating in the party or the social gathering, that I was excited to try, that wasn't super sugary, that wouldn't give me a hangover or make me feel like I was doing anything risky from a health perspective.
And then so you're building in a pretty kind of crowded space, and so are we. So the
Mhm.
feedback that we always get is like, what's to stop Nike from just copying what you guys are doing? And
Mm.
it's a hard question to answer. So like, I guess, how do you answer that question if people say, what's to stop like Coca-Cola, LaCroix, AHA, whatever, brand just copying what you're doing?
I mean, technically nothing. I mean, I can put trademarks in place so that if Pepsi wants to come after me, there's probably not much I can do. I think it's the fact that they're a giant corporation and I'm a tiny one person operation, and people want to root for the underdog, and they want to be part of a story and something special and someone making their way for the first time through a founder path. And so, like, I think my key is going to be community. It's going to be the people who bought through the pre-order, who are going to tell everyone they know about it, that are going to keep buying it, even if it's more expensive than a 40-cent can of AHA. Like, they feel special, I think, buying it and being part of it. And the fact that people wanted to spend, let's say, $50 on 3 cans of seltzer, like that, it's just because, like, I have a rapport with them and I talk to them like a human who is going through something for the first time, and they all respond. Like, I actually had to send an email last week that said, I told you that you're going to get your pre-orders by Thanksgiving, but you're actually probably not, because my ingredients are taking longer than I expected. And like, I got 4 or 5 replies that were like, we got this. Like, we'll wait as long as you need. I don't care when I get it. Like, just people want to support people that they see doing brave things. And so that's my competitive advantage, is that I'm not a major corporation that has no face or story.
And how did you find those people? Is it mainly friends and family, or did you do kind of a different type of community building efforts?
Yeah, it's definitely people I know. I'd say maybe 3 or 4 of the orders were, I didn't know their names or like who had gotten it. Like, I don't know where they came from, but a lot of it is friends and family, the founders that I've been talking to that have been kind of cheering me on as I've made my way to production. I've been building in public through LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram. So, like, whenever I hit a milestone, I'll talk about it. Even like when I was starting to think about doing this, the first thing I did was I posted on Twitter and I said, should I do this? And I had, I think, like over 140 likes and like a whole bunch of comments that were all super supportive. So I think people just that know that I'm doing this, they all want to see it. But I don't know. My friend was like, it's beside the point. Your seltzer could suck. And I would still like just be excited to try it and be part of this, like be part of the beta group of people trying it. Um, so yeah, I think there's some products where it's just like the marketing is everything or the community is everything. And it's not that the product is beside the point, but like you get a lot of grace if you're being really transparent about all the pieces behind the scenes and people just want to see the story.
Yeah, that makes sense. Have you thought at all about like when you post launch, how your strategy on socials is going to change? Because I assume it would be more centered on the product versus you building. So I guess how do you think about that generally?
Yeah, this kind of comes to a existential question around marketing, which is like, are you a founder-led brand or are you a product-led brand, right? Like, I can definitely lean on myself as the founder telling the story of the brand better than I can lean on the brand telling its own story. Like, it feels more authentic and genuine to me to be the face of it at this point, because that's my strength, is like me as the founder doing this, figuring things out as I go along, like saying how I'm making it or why I'm making it. Like, because if I'm just like behind the scenes and it's a we thing and it's like product photography and whatever, like I can do that, but I feel like I have to be part of it because that's my strength, right? Like, I'm not going to compete on just being a product that looks really attractive and lifestyle-y, and I'm not going to have like models. Like, I can't do it that way. Uh, or I'd have to spend a lot of money on an agency doing that. So like, I'm going to lean on the fact that I have a voice. I don't feel uncomfortable telling my story in public. So like, that's the way I have to do it, basically.
And then are you planning on doing any kind of like pop-ups, brand activations, things like that, just to interact with customers in person, or is it mainly an online strategy?
Yeah, so phase 1 is mail to people's houses across the US and Canada, get feedback from where they are, like probably a post-purchase survey once it's shipped. And then phase 2 is in-person feedback. So yes, I would love to do some farmers markets. I would love to do like one of my strategies is going to be like dip my toe into retail by having a couple of key accounts in my neighborhood where I can walk there, talk to the manager, give them samples, have them carry it, and then hopefully do a demo. So just set up a table and have people try it, take down notes. And it's not scalable, but it's definitely in the early days the right move to be able to gauge people's reactions in live time. And I'm hoping people won't lie to my face if they don't like it and they pretend to, because I've definitely done that at farmers markets or demos before. But I'm hoping I get enough people who are okay telling me how they actually feel. Because the worst would be if I assume it's all good and then I make a giant batch of it and then it just sits in the shelf and, then I've wasted all my time and money.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of like you in that if I knew someone had created some kind of food or drink and they gave it to me and I tried it, and even if it was bad, I'd probably say, yeah, that was pretty good. But in
Yeah,
my kind of like short experience as a founder, people are not afraid of kind of like criticizing and giving feedback. So I think you
good.
will find a decent amount of people who will probably give you good constructive feedback. But I wanted to go back to the kind of like the pre-order. Did you
Mhm.
think at all about doing a crowdfunding campaign? And if so, what made you think about doing a pre-order versus crowdfunding?
Yeah, I did think about it. I had to kind of evaluate the pros of cons of, okay, pro, you have a wider audience that they can market to and people can discover it a lot easier because you're already in an ecosystem of people who have given money to causes like that. But then con, they take a bunch of your proceeds. And so since I'm using my own money and I'm bootstrapping, every dollar counts and I'm spending, I've already spent more money even on the R&D part of this than I made through the pre-order campaign. So I do need to recoup as much of it as I can if I want to keep using this money for other phases of the launch and the rollout. So it really came down to I already bought a domain for Shopify and my store. So why not just sell through my own website that I own and be the direct person who has control over all of the positioning and the email flows and any feedback that I get. So I just decided that would be faster and easier and cheaper than having to do a Kickstarter campaign. And the other thing is like to be really successful, let's say in Kickstarter, you've got to put a lot of collaterals together. Like it's very, from what I've seen, it's very medium heavy. Like you need a lot of photography, you need a lot of video, you need a lot of storytelling. Like you have to do a lot more to get it off the ground if you want to be successful. You might even have to put ad spend around it, like to get people to the page. And so I just decided, I already own this piece of the internet. Like, let's just use it to sell products pretty immediately.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then how
Mhm.
hard was it to just, I guess, get like the branding done, get the website set up, all that kind of stuff? Was that, I guess, how hard and how expensive was that? Because that's something that we're looking into right now as well.
Yeah. So I mean, this is where I shine because I'm a marketer. Like, this is the stuff that I'm good at. All this other stuff of like making the product or like the logistics of the product or the unit economics, like that's not my wheelhouse. But the marketing part, I'm like, all right, this is something I've actually done before. This is great. So for the can design, I had worked with an agency and I had this idea in my head of what it should look like, but I wasn't really happy with it at the end of the day. Like I kind of changed my mind. It's not their fault at all. So I went through one agency and then I ended up working with a freelancer. So I told him like I had a mood board of physical things that I had collected that kind of had the right tone or visual identity. And I said, here, can you make this into something like a riff of it? And so he came back with 3 different treatments of it, and I really liked some pieces of each one. So I said, can you combine this one with that one? So we arrived at that. I think the whole process maybe took like a month and a half, and I think it cost about like 3K. It wasn't super crazy because I'd had agencies quote me like 20K on like a whole brand package. I was like, I can't spend that much. I just don't. I'm not a VC backed brand. So like I gotta be scrappy. And I think one of the hard things being a marketer is just letting it go that it's not gonna be perfect. Like I already think I could have made it different or like a little more differentiated. So, but you got to put something out there to get feedback on. So like kind of letting that go, even if it's not 100% perfect, because I don't think it ever will be. And then for the website, I took the elements of what he'd done for the cans and then also some elements that another freelancer had done for email design. And I kind of took all the graphics and wrangled them into a homepage and an FAQ page and a contact me page, I think, uh, and an about us page. So that was pretty easy, like the front end of it, what it looks like that I've done stuff like that before. The tough part is the pre-order part of it. So I wasn't just like collecting orders and shipping immediately. I was just collecting orders and sitting on them. And it's US and Canada, not just Canada. So just like the back end part of making that work from an operational perspective was a challenge. But I have friends who work at Shopify and their support chat's really good too. So I'd say it didn't take more than a few days to get that set up. And then the domain I think cost me, or the subscription's like $30 a month. So it's not a lot of money. Um, yeah, so I've been pretty scrappy. Like I haven't really spent too much money on that stuff. I know you can.
You definitely can. We've gotten some of those similar quotes. it seems like if you wanted to spend like $1 million, you could do that
Uh-huh.
and not really even get anywhere based on how many
Mm-mm.
people reach out to you and some of the prices that they quote. But you said a couple times that you're bootstrapping, you got to be scrappy, you're not raising. Have you thought at all about raising capital? Have you looked into kind of like what that process would be like at all, or are you just kind of wanting to bootstrap for the near future?
Yeah. So I, interestingly enough, worked at a company that funded e-commerce companies. Like it gave them capital to use towards inventory and marketing. And I was privy to some stories about like the downsides of VC and capital raising. And like, I think there's been a lot of reliance, and I totally understand it now. Like, if you don't want to have to deal with the unit economics, just throw a bunch of money at it. Like, you're going to assume that like if you hit a certain point of scaling that you're going to be profitable, but like you don't have to worry about it when you have millions in the bank. Like you can just kind of spend whatever you're spending and assume it's all going to work out later. So like I think it's way better if I'm thinking about every dollar that I spend and how far it's going to go. If I'm like trying to do things that are healthy for the business, where like how lean can I be where like that's gonna shorten the amount of time to profitability. Like the less money I spend now, the faster I'm gonna get to making a profit. So like I like that. I think that's a healthier way to go about it. Like I don't have the luxury of just throwing money at things. So I would only do VC if I had like a once in a lifetime opportunity to partner, let's say with a retailer who needed me to spend like 50K or 100K to get the inventory ahead of me making the money back. Like if that's the case, like if I really truly think it would be life changing, I would maybe go that route. But I feel like I would even maybe take out a loan or use a credit card before I would use VC, like assuming I could pay it back within a certain amount of time. Like I just like if I'm doing all this work myself, like why give up equity? You know?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, for us, I mean, it's similar. We've had to invest pretty heavily into product dev and then branding to an extent too.
Mhm.
So, and then basically every other area, we're just trying to be as scrappy as possible. So for you, is it similar that most of the money is going into product dev, or like where are the areas where you're really investing and then other areas where you're trying to be as scrappy as possible?
Yeah, so the chunk of money that I gave up was for research and development just because I knew I couldn't do it myself and they could fast track that part of it for me. And they would be reliable and like do all the right things in that area. The other big expense has been design and the things around making it. So yeah, like the ingredients is a chunk of money, the boxes is going to be a chunk of money, like anything to do with the product has been expensive. And then I imagine I'll be paying a chunk of money for shipping as well once that piece is figured out. But that's it. Like anything outside of that, I'm doing all the work with like setting stuff up myself and doing research and asking questions and I'll be the one picking and packing. So that was another piece of the puzzle where I could spend a lot of money to give a warehouse um part of my capital, but I'm just going to do the traditional founder thing. Like maybe not technically out of my garage, it might be out of my home office, but I want control over what the boxes look like and the notes that I put in there and just make sure I know when they're getting picked up and all that. So I'm okay taking that on myself. And then for logistics, like I'll be using a software that helps with order tracking so I can keep people posted if there are boxes on the move. And that way, like I don't want to have the sparkling water sit on their doorsteps and freeze. So like I'm going to be very communicative around like, okay, it's going to go out now and I hope you're not traveling or you can have your neighbor pick it up or something.
Is there a risk? I have no idea, but is there a risk that the ingredients or the actual product would go bad if they're sitting in a warehouse for too long, or is that not something that's even a possibility?
Yeah, so the good thing about my product is that it's shelf stable. It doesn't have anything that needs to be refrigerated. But you do have to think about, okay, too cold and it freezes, too hot and it boils or explodes. So there is that element there. And then there is a lifetime situation to think about with the flavors because they're natural flavors. And so like they usually have a shelf life of like, let's say 6 months to a year. So they're not infinite. It can't just like sit in a, storage forever. So I will make a note, Best Buy on the cans and like let people know like you should drink this within a certain amount of time. So yeah, there is that to think about. But I'm not alcohol, so I don't have to worry about all the regulations that have to do with that. I'm not like pasteurized. There's no juice. There's nothing that's going to break down or ferment. So at least with that, I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And for us, like our first year was basically spent trying to find a designer. And that was a pretty major roadblock for us. We really couldn't do too much until we found that. Have
Mhm.
you had kind of like similar experiences where there are certain things that were just complete roadblocks and took a while to figure out, or has it been more smooth sailing for you?
Hmm, yeah, I think the roadblock was really making the jump between messing around in my kitchen and having an expert do it and just arriving at that fact. I was kind of in denial for a bit that I'd have to spend a lot to do it. I was like, oh, I'll just make it work. But I just realized I didn't have the equipment or the training to do it myself. So it was just, I think I maybe waffled for a few months before admitting it to myself and finding help. So that was a stumbling block. Think I did hit a wall with like the financials where I thought I needed to get it figured out before doing the pre-order stuff. And so for a few weeks I was like, how does anyone figure out how to charge anything? Because there's so many variables and some things are like batch costs or R&D costs or like per month costs or per order costs. Like I was like, I can't wrap my head around this. Like it doesn't seem like any calculator is going to capture all of it. Like I was just like, but then I don't know. I just came to the realization I didn't need to figure it out quite yet, and that I could ask someone who knew what they were doing. And I ended up doing a barter system. So I helped this finance friend with his website copy. And in exchange, I think he owes me like 5 hours worth of financial advice. So I'm gonna try to round up all the documents and say like, Mike, you make sense of this because this is not not what I went to school for.
A return to the barter economy. I like that. That's smart. That's very
Yeah,
smart.
I mean, if you don't have money, you do have time probably. So like I'll swap my time for your time.
Yep, exactly. I know on the other podcast you were on that you said there's a lot of content, and I agree with this. There's a lot of content where people who their company is worth like hundreds of millions or billions, and then they're talking about the early days, and usually it's kind of like they're leaving out some of the challenges and some of the really tactical information. And there's not a lot of content on going from zero to $1,000. So do you have any tips in terms of how to do that, or just based on your experience, things that you've learned in terms of going from, zero to $1,000, or for you, like getting those pre-orders, things like that?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, join everything you can, like every Slack group, every Facebook group, every Twitter group, like whatever like pools of entrepreneurs that exist online. Like ask, like if you even just know one entrepreneur or you like see one online, just ask them what they're part of because they're like odds are they're part of some community and you can join that one and then ask people in that community what other communities they're part of because like that's the best way to get in front of people who have gone through what you've gone through. So I can say off the top of my head, like Startup CPG Slack has been an amazing resource. I'm part of Lean Lux, which is like a e-commerce operators group. It's a subscription membership, but it's so worth the money. Part of this Founders Helping Founders WhatsApp group, led by a local entrepreneur here, Susie York. It's amazing. People are comparing notes every day. Like sometimes I have to mute it because it's too active, but it's so good. You just pop in and you search for any term that you're looking for, and you'll like, boom, you'll get insurance, you'll get like trademark lawyers, you'll get like wholesale tactics, you'll get like spreadsheets of like whatever you need. It's amazing. So join communities, subscribe to newsletters. There's like a people, product people one, I think Oren John writes it. It's so good. It's like about sourcing your products and like what warehouses to work with and like people who work in China or Mexico that manufacture, let's say, apparel that you can brand. So it's just really tactical and helpful. Yeah, so subscribe to newsletters. I do a lot of following on LinkedIn. Whenever I see any entrepreneur talking about like behind the scenes stuff, I'll follow them. And then if they comment on someone else, I'll follow them. So I'm just like following a whole ton of like my whole feed is just like entrepreneurs doing what they're doing. And like if you want to start building rapport with them, like you just comment and just say like, support them, say like you're doing cool things or ask them a question. Like people are very open to that. And then yeah, definitely lean on people when you don't have something you know how to do. Just ask. Like people have been really nice and open and like will volunteer their time. So if you get stuck, just ask someone like, "Hey, am I doing this right? Like, how did you do this?" I feel like I've dodged a lot of bullets just asking questions that way. Uh, and then yeah, lean into like sometimes your weaknesses are your strengths. Like if I don't know how to market myself as like a, I don't know, like a lifestyle brand, like I will lean into my founder story and like that will probably make me stand out versus other companies that have more money and are more polished. I think that's probably like my bulk of my questions. Oh, and one more tip is if you're dealing with someone who works in the industry, like let's say, like for example, I had this lawyer look over my co-packer contract. Um, he probably knows like other pieces of the industry and like who his clients go to for other parts of the puzzle. And so, I asked him like, oh, do you have any beverage brands that you work with that like, do you know like what warehouse they store their products in, or do you know what co-packers they use? So you can kind of use them as a hub of information outside of their realm of expertise. And, worst case scenario, they say, no, I don't know. Or like they might introduce you to the founder so they're not like sharing the trade secrets. But it's a really good hack is like anyone who deals with founders in any capacity probably knows other vendors in the space that you could work with.
100%. I agree with that. What I would say, and I'll just be super brief, but like 2 years ago, we had really no network in the footwear space. And then we started reaching out to people in our network. They introduced us to people, then got introduced to their friends. We started getting kind of like reached out to by agencies, talked to those agencies, asked for references. Those references are founders. And then you just get, like you said on LinkedIn, you start following people, commenting, and it's almost exponential. So I think that's definitely good advice. One of the things you touched on this a little bit, but you're a first time founder, as far as I can tell, right? You don't have a background in beverage, food and bev. So like us, and we run into kind of credibility issues a lot. Like people are like, you guys just graduated from law school and business school. Brandon, you were in the military. Aaron, you were a consultant. Like what do you guys know about shoes? Like you're not going to be successful with this. So do you ever run into issues like that at all, or no?
I mean, the great thing about being bootstrapped is it doesn't care what anyone else said. Like, I'm not like accountable to a board or investors. Like, I can just go off and do it. Like, I don't need permission. No one said you're not qualified yet to me. Maybe not into my face at least. No, I'm just doing it. Like, I don't need anyone to tell me I'm allowed. Which is the beauty of the whole thing. That's another thing. Like about VC, you're kind of giving up your control, or like you're not steering the ship as much as you could be. So no, I don't deal with that. I think if I were to go out and raise, I'd have a lot of questions I'd have to answer that I would probably be uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think we must have more of a critical network than you have, because we have people just reaching out and then basically saying we have no idea what we're doing. We need to like shut down our company and stuff like that. So
Oh man, that's
yeah,
tough. No, I think beverage probably gives you a little more slack because it's not that complex. Like you are how someone walks. Like that is a big piece of someone's day to day. Like mine is like a luxury thing you're gonna drink for, it's like fancy water. Like it's
yeah,
not
yeah,
life or death. It's not gonna mess with anyone's gait or, so I can totally understand why it's a higher threshold
yeah,
of knowledge probably.
for sure. And then I guess what worries you most about this business? Like what keeps you up at night in terms of maybe something you have to overcome or something that might not work out down the road?
I'd say because my background is in like a lot of marketing is like customer psychology and how people are feeling and how you can appeal to like how, like their emotions or like you can get them to take an action. Like I think a lot about the customer experience and like because I've never done this before, like I don't want to mess it up so where it's stressing someone out. Like I don't want them to regret having ordered it. So for example, like the whole delivery thing, like let's say they're traveling for the holidays, like I don't want them to have it sit on their doorstep and sweat about like not being able to pick it up. Like that would be like I want to make people's lives happier and better, not worse. So like that's one thing I think about. And also if I end up selling this more widely than just a handful of, like let's say I had like 92 orders. So like if I sell more than that, like am I going to be able to keep up with any sort of customer experience, like replies or feedback or like because I'm just one person doing this on the side, like if I get a lot of questions or complaints, like am I going to be able to handle it myself? Like I want that to be a good experience too. So it's more like if I have the great problem of trying to scale this, like, am I going to be able to handle it myself? Like, am I going to have to outsource it? And then I have to relinquish the control over everything and like find someone else to trust. Like, that would be a big piece that I'd sweat. I don't have to worry about it now, but let's say this goes off well. I think that would definitely be something that I feel really responsible for.
Yep. That, and you kind of mentioned this, but I think that's a pretty good problem to have if you're scaling,
Yeah.
so much that you can't even keep track of all the customers trying to reach out
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah, and like all the stuff with like forecasting inventory, then like making sure I don't sell out or I have enough, or
Yeah.
there's a lot that I'm going to have to
That
unpack
scares
once I hit that.
that scares me too. And I'm just like, I'm gonna have to find someone who is an expert in that because I just don't want to have to deal with all that.
Yeah,
And-
yeah. At that point, like at least I know I don't know that, and I can just find someone who does.
yeah, exactly. And I guess what's been the biggest learning so far, just in terms of like, you're an entrepreneur now. It's difficult. There's a lot of things we learn on a day-to-day basis over time. So like, what's been the biggest learning or the one thing that you've gotten really better at since you've been an entrepreneur?
I would just say everything takes way more time than you expect. Like the turnaround times are quoted, like add another month at least. Like if I were to do this again, I would have given myself more time. Like I was like, oh, I'll be so scrappy. I'll get this all done myself, but you're relying on so many external factors to happen that are outside your control. So like the can printing takes as long as it takes, and the ingredients being shipped takes as long as it takes, and the boxes being done takes as long as it takes. So, and like again, all the turnaround times are different. So like I thought that the thing that was going to take the longest was the can printing, but it's actually the ingredients. And so it's impacting my ability to ship when I said I would. So just know that it's gonna like just give yourself more cushion than you think you're gonna need, because yeah, if anything happens where your order is like less of a priority and they bump it, or like you're hitting against the holidays and everyone's off and can't do what you need them to, like you have to factor that all in.
And then what would you say is the hardest part about being an entrepreneur?
Hardest part, I think just maybe balancing it with the rest of your life. Like I have a family, I've got a job, I've got like friends that I want to see. I get invited to these really awesome D2C dinners, and sometimes I just have to say no because I have other obligations. And so like it's just kind of a different slice of my life, and I have to make it balance with the rest of everything else, and everything's a priority, it feels like. So like just keeping it balanced, I think is going to be like right now it's more of a side hustle, but like I could see it at some point being like, does it have to take more of my life over, how much of this do I have to focus on?
Yeah, that's for sure very hard. I run into the same issues, and I don't have a spouse or kids, so I can't imagine. And what's been the most rewarding part so far about being an entrepreneur, starting your own business?
I think just the reaction from everyone, the actual like great support that I've gotten, the cheerleading that I've gotten, like people just want to see you succeed in this beautiful way. And there are people I've never met that are just on LinkedIn sending like the nicest comments. Like they're like, can't wait to wear the branded apparel and rep the product. Like they haven't even had it yet. They're just like, I can't wait to wear your t-shirt and like tell people about it. And like, it just feels so good. It's like a validation of you, because like they don't have the product yet. It's like you as the founder are kind of like you just feel really loved. I don't know. It's just been really nice. Like I haven't had haters yet. So
I think
like I might
haters will come eventually, but it's good that you
yeah,
don't
if I'm
have
doing
them
it
yet.
right, I'll
Yeah,
probably have
yeah.
haters. So
Yeah,
I
haters hate
guess
successful people, so once you're successful, they'll come out of the woodwork.
yeah, I guess I'm not doing well enough to have haters yet.
So, related to that, what does success look like for you, for your company?
I think it's people I've never met or heard of drinking it and saying they like it. Like it's so easy for my friends and family to be supportive, obviously, but like if you're not related to me by blood, or we haven't been friends since middle school, like what? Like is it actually because the product is great? Like do you really love the branding? Do you really like the taste? Like are you buying more of it? I think that's really the benchmark for me, is like if you're not part of my circle already, like, and you want to buy it. If people are asking me like how can I subscribe to this, let's say, like that would be winning, I think. And I don't need to be in front of Walmart holding my cans. Like I just like want to be in a few stores where people who don't know me buy, and I'll be like, all right, this is real. Because right now it still feels a little bit like pretend.
Yeah, I get that for sure.
Yeah.
And then in what ways, if any, has being kind of like a beverage outsider helped you in starting your business or being a first-time founder?
I think it's just being able to ask questions and not feel like an idiot because I've never done it. It's like, of course I'm asking these questions. Like I don't know everything. Like someone asked me, like, are you the importer of record in an email thread the other day? And I said, I have no idea what that is. So probably not. Like I literally said that in the reply. I was like, probably not. I don't know what that is. So it kind of gives you a pass to just be a sponge. You're like, I've never done this. Like, how do I? So, and people relate to that more, I think, than if I came off like I knew what I was talking about. So it does give you the advantage of like people want to help you because you're new. I think also I have no assumptions or playbooks to lean on. It's not like, oh, I'm going to do the thing I've always done. Like, I feel like I might be more innovative or take things from a different angle than someone normally would. Like, I don't have the historical best practices. So I just kind of do things my way or the ways that other people have done them, but like my own spin on it. So I think like, yeah, I'll probably end up doing things a little bit differently than anyone else would.
That makes sense. There's a ton of terms that we see in emails that we have to ask each other, like, hey, what does that mean? And then we Google it, we still don't understand. Then we have to ask the person what they meant. So I definitely relate to that. In the last few minutes, I'll hand it over to Brandon in case he had any last questions for you.
Yeah, I'll come in with the cleanup. No, this has been really cool, and Aaron always has a really like comprehensive list of questions. So I typically only have like one or two, and they're usually like softballs. So we were discussing, and maybe like it was a conversation with someone else, and then I think Aaron also posted on LinkedIn about it, about like unsustainable advantages, like things you can do as a small like company that big companies can't like replicate. And I noticed that you kept mentioning like the apparel, like that's a part of like what we call like the unboxing experience. Like what like motivated you to kind of go and add that to the order?
Yeah. I think it's part like I wanted to make an impact. Like I want someone to be like, wow. Like I want them to feel wow before they even try it. Like they're like, oh, this is so cool. Like just because it's a visual medium in a way, like a physical product in a way that digital products that I've been selling my whole like career, like it's just a software that I've been marketing, but this is like an actual tangible thing you hold. So like I want to really lean into that and like they get it and they're like, wow, like I want that. But I also, and I want it to be memorable so that when I roll out again, people are like, oh yeah, I remember that was so cool. I want to buy it again. Um, and then it's part like the virality angle, like maybe people will post about it and then like I get a network effect like for free. It's like free advertising basically if people start talking about it. So like I want that impact as well from an outside perspective. Like, can I spread this a little bit? Um, but yeah, brand really matters. And so like that's an investment I'm willing to make. Like I'm willing to pay more per box for it to be a visually appealing thing. So like that's kind of one of my luxury items. Like it's like I didn't have to spend. I could have just sent them in like a corrugated cardboard box, but like that it's part of the story, it's part of the experience. It's like the part of it that I can really like have fun with. And that's another thing. It's kind of a reward to myself for having done all this like slog work is like I want to have fun with this part of it, because I can. And that's my expertise.
No, yeah, that is exactly, and we kind of heard the same thing from other companies who also have like some kind of unboxing experience, and we ourselves think it's like that fun element. Like if you're gonna get a product, you might have as much fun as possible with it. So that makes sense. But no, that's all I had. I thought this was an amazing conversation. It's cool hearing from you. I just listened to your podcast maybe a couple days ago, so it was awesome to be able to kind of sit in here and listen to you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening to that. And I'm excited to have this conversation too. I feel like you don't know about like I don't think about how many things I know until someone asks me and I'm like, "Oh, I've thought about that," or "Oh, I have an actual response and I've actually thought it through." So, like you don't realize how much is in your head until someone pulls it out of you.
Yeah. Did you
Definitely
have
get that.
any kind of like questions for us? Because happy to answer. And if you don't, that's fine too. But if you wanted to ask us any questions, feel free.
Yeah, no. Okay, so you're 2 years into this. I saw you have prototypes, or at least I think I saw a full prototype
Yeah,
on
we have the
LinkedIn
full
that you've
thing.
done.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a
That's
couple of
so
them.
fun. Okay, so like what's your philosophy? Like why did you pick this particular design and this like what it looks like? What's your what's your differentiator? Like what's the why for you?
I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot. So I'm going to try not to speak for like 15 minutes or whatever. But
You
Brandon,
get 1 minute.
yeah, Brandon, I'll actually let you go first because I feel like I've already talked way too much.
No, I guess I'll attack like one part of it, and then I'll let you kind of elaborate on it. So, why we chose this is we kind of we collaborated with our designer, and so we were looking, and I won't give you the whole back spiel on like how we came across this designer and how we ended up landing him, but we kind of gave him our ideas, like what we wanted, and then just making sure that it kind of fit within our values. So he wanted something that could be used across multiple sports and multiple surfaces. And then also he wanted that sustainable element as well. And so he came with a few sketches, and then this is the one that we kind of like landed on. Um, and then I guess our why is just wanting to make sports accessible to kids at a very early age, especially when they're still in like that exploratory phase where they're kind of like, oh, I don't know if I really like soccer, but the parents are just trying to like give them an opportunity to participate in as much as possible. And if we can kind of lower that barrier to entry so that so kids have access to the sports, then that means if they can wear one shoe across all these different sports, then I think we've kind of been successful, at least in half of our mission. So that's been one of our biggest whys, is just trying to make sports accessible and fun. I'll
Oh, I
let
love that.
Aaron finish up.
Yeah, and just kind of like adding on the why. So both me and Brandon, we love sports. We started playing when we were like 4 or 5. We were pretty good athletes, good enough to play in college. And we look back on our time when we were younger and we're like, you don't really need a $100 pair of shoes when you're 5 or 6. You probably don't even need sport specific footwear. And we talked to a lot of parents, ran surveys, went to soccer practices, things like that. And what we realized is that parents are already kind of just buying one shoe for all these different sports and activities. So why not actually have a shoe that's built for that? We looked in the market, we really couldn't find it, and we couldn't find an athletic shoe brand that was specifically for kids. And we think that kids deserve that and they have unique needs. So if we build an entire company around that, then we think we could do some really cool things and unique things for kids. And we also want to kind of bring back fun to youth sports because they've gotten like the focus is way too much on competition way too early now. And really when you're just getting into sports, it's about having fun, meeting people, learning life lessons, all that kind of stuff, because like 85, 90, 95% of people who play sports when they're like 5 or 6, they're not really going to achieve anything of note in athletics. So there's no point in kind of making them aspire to be the next, I don't know, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, whoever it is.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Nothing came of my recreational soccer experience, so it's
Yeah,
totally
yeah,
true.
yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. So when people say, it sounds like you're getting some pushback on like what qualifies you to do this, like what's your response?
I mean, what I would say is, what's to qualify anyone? I mean, everyone started somewhere, right? Like
Yeah.
we're all human. We're both smart guys, and we surround ourselves with people who do have experience. So our team, we have people from Adidas, Reebok, Converse, and people who are like pretty senior in those organizations. So it's not like we're um like designing shoes ourselves or anything. We talk to parents, we understand what the shoe needs to do, then we communicate it to people who can actually turn that into a product, and then we bring it to the market, we do the marketing, all that kind of stuff. So it's not exactly rocket science. It's just understanding like a need in the market, finding the right people to create the product, and then just offering the product to consumers. So
Yeah.
I think those people, I don't know. I feel like the people who say that, they've never really created anything. So they
Yep.
don't really realize that it's really not that hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm like, if I can do it, I mean, not anyone can do it, but
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
it just takes persistence and a lot of time, and like you don't stop when you hit a wall. Like that's basically it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And what would you say your unfair advantage is?
Brandon, you want to go first or should I?
I mean, I think our unfair advantage is being able to like build a community from scratch. So a lot of these brands have already kind of been established, and they're already been around for decades, and so people have a general idea of who they are, what they stand for. For us, we've got like a blank slate, like a clean canvas, and we have an opportunity to make the first impression and really build these networks, these communities that will hopefully back us at the very beginning and continue throughout our life. So I think that's like one of our biggest advantages is being brand new and being able to create the narrative. And so we kind of really lean into that. We want to make sure that people understand that this is a journey and bring them along for it, so they get a chance to kind of witness a lot of the things that we stumble on, or some of our early successes. And there's a sense of like ownership, or like, I don't know, like you really like have some kind of connection with us. So that's really like what we think of as being an early or an advantage that maybe one of these bigger brands just can't have.
I think also one of our advantages is being specialized. So like I was mentioning before, basically we're very focused on just this one segment. So we're thinking like maybe 4 to 8, 4 to 10, somewhere around that age group, people or kids who are just getting into sports. And basically all of our time, attention, branding, community building, it's all going to be focused on that age group and their parents. And if like a Nike and Adidas, they serve so many different segments, they have so many different types of shoes that they can't put so much focus on that one group. And even if they did and they just really focused on it, then maybe then they like, for us, we're happy if people think about us as a kiddie shoe brand. Whereas if Nike starts to get the reputation that they're a kiddie shoe brand, then people who are competitive athletes are not going to want to wear that shoe too. So their bread and butter is kind of like older teenagers, professionals, whereas us, we just focus all of our effort on this one segment, and we don't think other brands are necessarily going to do or say some of the same things that, like, if we say, little kids, they don't need all these different technologies and things that are changing every year. It's just like a marketing gimmick. Nike does that stuff. So if they say that, then people will start looking at their shoes differently. Like, is this, if it's a gimmick for kids, is it a gimmick for adults too? Like, why should I buy this wacky new technology? So I think that's also an advantage we have.
Yeah, no, that's totally smart. Like niche down and then you're defensible.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it. It's fun talking to you.
Definitely
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Brandan and Aaron. That was awesome.
Yep. Cool.